Hello there, people of the internet. Normally there's cows around me, but I actually don't see them anywhere in the field, and that's honestly a little bit on the concerning side, but I'll take care of that later. If you are in the gun community, then I am sure that you have had this happen to you. If you have yourself something like this, it doesn't have to be this. This is a high-point pistol caliber carbine. But if you're in the gun community, then odds are you have yourself some sort of situation where you have come across something like this, unless you are among the group of people on the other end of the spectrum. Whenever I break out something made out of like polymer and metal like this right here, I will get a certain group of people coming out of the woodwork, and they will typically talk about, one of two things, or a lot of time these people will just full on say both things at the same time. They'll talk about how these right here are way too deadly and no one needs to own anything like this because any job can be solved with, an old school wood and steel rifle, while at the same time they'll say although these things are way too deadly for somebody to own, they will say they are just toys and do not even begin to stack in comparison to something that is made of wood and steel. In this particular case, I got a high-point carbine and a Mosin Nagant out here. These are really apples to oranges comparisons. Whenever I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about these particular rifles. I just happen to have these out here on the gun range, so that's what I'm going to be using as our comparison. If we want a more like apples to apples comparison, I would compare something like a modern AR-10 in 308s compared to like an old school wooden steel M1 Grand or something like that. That would be a better apples to apples comparison, but these are what I have out here, so that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about. Whenever I got people that come out, or not people that come out here, whenever I got people that I talk to on the internet, they either go one of those two ways if they are not really for your polymer firearms. Personally, I definitely prefer the wood and steel look of the firearms. I just like your old school style of firearms, but I also know the capabilities and limitations of these types of systems. So these people both think that these right here are way, way too deadly and nobody needs to own them, while at the same time they think that these are dramatically inferior in the capabilities of your old school wood and steel rifles. And it doesn't have to be a PCC versus a full power rifle. It could be a full power rifle versus a full power rifle. We're gonna go ahead and I really need to hammer that point in, otherwise people will focus on that in the comment like you can't compare a high point pistol caliber carbine to a Mosin Nagant. And I'm like, no, that's not what this comparison is about. It's about polymer guns versus wood and steel guns. People always like hyper focus on these specific examples that I have out here, when what I typically talk about is more of a vague scenario. Like for example, if we have an apples to apples comparison, full power rifle, polymer, tactical looking rifle versus old school wood and steel rifle, or I guess a AR-10 versus something more like a M14 would probably be a more iconic comparison. But whenever people freak out over polymer being on a firearm, I try to get them to realize that the polymer on the firearm does not make it it doesn't make it unsafe. A lot of times whenever these elderly gentlemen who like wood and steel see polymer on a gun, they'll think to themselves, hey, that's plastic, it's going to break upon firing, there's all sorts of things that could go wrong, I don't want, that thing to absolutely explode on me. Just a lot of these myths that were developed in the 80s whenever polymer framed firearms were coming into fruition and replacing your steel framed firearms. A lot of these myths never really died off because nobody really learned no one really learned how the science behind these polymer guns really began to pick up and take off. That is alive, and it needs to get off of my Mosin. But typically, whenever you have polymer on a firearm, you're going to have some sort of rail system that's oftentimes going to be polymer, might be metal, but oftentimes it's just going to be polymer. Some kind of rail system, and all that is to mount like lights or lasers or optics or maybe some sort of extra grip or a flashlight or something on there. Typically with your elderly gentlemen, they don't really want to mount all these different accessories onto their firearms, so they don't really think about it. They're just like, hey, factory iron sights from this Milsurp rifle, that's the best thing in the world. Who needs a red dot, it's scary and it glows and I don't know how it works, so it must be taboo and the worst thing ever. But all that is, you know, made for mounting optics or like grips or, like I said, lasers or flashlights or something along that nature. You don't have to be scared of it because it's black and made of plastic. Or if, like, the actual, you know, in this particular case, the handguard itself is made of plastic, the handguard is not a load-bearing surface. It's just there. It's a surface there to prevent you from burning your hand on a hot barrel. Something like the 1860 Henry. That did not have a handguard on it. And as a result, under sustained fire, people had to like use rags and whatnot to hold onto their rifle, otherwise they would burn their hand. Well, the handguard is just there to stop you from grabbing onto a hot barrel and burning your hand. Not that, I mean, well, I guess it would take a lot of shooting with this high point for this barrel to heat up to the point to where you would burn your hand. But the handguard is mostly there so you can protect your hand from the barrel in the event that it gets hot. It does make for a more adequate, more comfortable grip as well. The 1860 Henry does not necessarily have the greatest ergonomic style of grip, but a polymer hand grip, that's not going to blow up in your face or blow your hand apart whenever you fire the firearm. Typically, with a firearm, I say typically because there are very few exceptions where this is not the case, but all of the pressure is contained inside of the chamber, which is, you know, closed and locked with the bolt or some sort of delaying system. It is closed with the bolts, you know, holding, well, the bolt closed onto the chamber, assuming that your headspace is correct. But that chamber is going to be closed, and all the pressure is going to be contained inside of that and inside of the barrel as the bullet goes flying out of the end of the barrel. You're not going to have any load-bearing surfaces on the gun that is made of polymer, and that's one of the main reasons why we are able to use polymer for a dramatic amount of gun accessories and whatnot. Like, for example, the AR platform, a lot of times your lower receivers are actually made of polymer. And the reason for that is the lower receiver is like there's no load-bearing surfaces there whatsoever. Now there are polymer upper receivers AR as well, but those are steel reinforced. So whenever people call them polymer upper receivers, they're just like, they're more or less steel upper receivers that are not all there, so they fill in the gaps with polymer. So, not true polymer upper receivers, because those are load-bearing surfaces. It is the steel inside of the polymer receiver that actually takes the load from those load-bearing surfaces. But just because something has polymer on it, the science that has gone behind creating that polymer system, you don't have to worry about that thing absolutely flying apart. As a matter of fact, there are firearms out there that are not made of polymer that are actually worrisome of flying apart. Like, for example, there's a couple of metal firearms that I have seen fly apart on numerous occasions just because of poor quality. And those are normally because they are made of some sort of cheap alloy. Specifically, hold on, I had something fly into my mouth. Specifically, like Saturday Night Special handguns and things like that, like your old Jennings brand and just Lorson and things that are like those extremely cheap handguns that were, you know, imported and made and whatnot, and used for nefarious purposes and whatnot. They were made to be disposable handguns, but they were made of extremely cheap material because they were not made for longevity. They were made to be as bottom tier budget as possible, and those are a metallic alloy that those are made of. I would be more concerned about one of those old school metallic alloy handguns flying apart in my face upon firing than I would something that is made of polymer. So just because it has polymer on it, just because it has plastic on it, just because it is a thing that is different than what people are used to, it doesn't mean that it is bad. It doesn't mean that it's dangerous. It doesn't mean that it's going to blow up in your hand. Now, that being said, wood and metal is dramatically more durable than things that are made out of polymer. Like, if you have yourself an aluminum or a steel receiver on your AR versus a polymer receiver, that steel receiver is going to be significantly stronger, although significantly more expensive and significantly heavier than your polymer receiver. Or if you have yourself like an old Milsurp rifle, these are outlandishly durable guns, and they can be put through a lot of punishment before they start to see any wear and tear. Or if you have yourself a steel frame handgun, like a 1911, you could use that bastard as a hammer, and it would come out unscathed. Whereas something like a polymer frame handgun, I've actually seen this before myself. I saw somebody who had their dog chew their Glock, and he chewed up the polymer frame on the handgun. And if that was a steel frame handgun, guess what? That wouldn't have mattered. That dog would not have been able to even scratch that steel frame. So yeah, steel and wood is definitely significantly more durable than polymer. But polymer is not bad, it's not dangerous, unlike whatever this is that's flying around me. Get the hell out of here. But polymer is not bad or dangerous or anything like that. It just has such a, there's Kevin. It just had such a negative connotation with the previous generation simply because it's new technology that they don't understand. A lot of the times they don't understand how these particular firearms work, and they don't understand that there are systems inside of the firearm that stop the pressures from going into these polymer areas. Like if you have yourself the lower receiver, all of the load-bearing systems in the upper receiver, like all the gas and whatnot, is directed through that upper receiver, and in like the direct gas impingement and the gas key and whatnot on the bolt carrier group, and the two vent holes that come out of the ejection port. All of the gas and whatnot is contained inside of that area, along with the chamber and the barrel, and none of that pressure goes towards the lower receiver. That's why we're able to get away with polymer lower receivers on the AR platform. Now, if you had, I have no idea where that round went. If you had something that was it did have gases and whatnot, and it did have pressures going into the polymer area of a firearm, that is whenever you don't want a polymer firearm. You want yourself a steel firearm. You want metal strong enough to be able to withstand whatever pressures are going into that area. Like, for example, that was cool. Like, for example, if I have this Mosin here, and let's say the receiver over the chamber area was polymer, I don't know why they would do that, and this area is probably a poor example, but if that was polymer and it was not this extremely robust solid steel, then the power from the 7.62x54 rimmed would absolutely decimate that poor little polymer chamber. Now this right here, the barrel, the chamber, the bolt, all of that right there, that is a type of metal. I'm not positive on what type of metal, either metal alloy or something strong enough to be able to withstand the pressures of 9mm, but all of the polymer on the firearm are places that have nothing to do with the actual pressures going on in the chamber and the barrel. Like the polymer, we got handguard rails, stock, we got our little pistol grip right here. All of this polymer stuff has nothing to do with the actual load-bearing pressures, or the load-bearing pressure systems on the firearm. Haha, that was fun though. So yeah, you don't have to be scared. You don't got to be scared of these scary-looking guns. It's all a matter of people just not understanding how these particular firearms work. Okay guys, let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know what you guys' experience are, because I have seen plenty of events where exactly this topic, this situation has come up. So let me know, talk to me in the comments below. And well, I guess I'll go ahead and end the video here, because I think I've rambled on long enough about this topic. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check that out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you all in the next episode. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garrett.
a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.